Dive Podcast, straight talk on politics, national security, and America's future. With Robert Johnson and Linda Miller, we cut through the spin, tackle the tough issues, and give you the real story behind today's headlines. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to stay informed.
Okay, let's jump right in today. There's been a pretty significant development, a new agreement just finalized between the U.S. and Ukraine.
That's right. It's all about Ukraine's natural resources.
Exactly. And our goal here is to, unpack this deal. What are the key parts? Why are both countries doing this now?
And what could it all mean? We're basing this on the reports that are out there, of course.
Yeah, and it seems complex. Different viewpoints and some big questions about, well, how much these resources are really worth and if they can even get to them.
It definitely warrants a closer look.
So let's start with the agreement itself. What's the core of it?
Well, the essence seems to be that it grants the United States priority rights.
Priority rights for what exactly?
For developing Ukraine's mineral wealth. And to make that happen, they're setting up a joint investment fund. Both countries together.
Okay, a joint fund. But who controls the resources themselves? Does Ukraine still own its land?
The information suggests yes. Ukraine reportedly keeps full control over its land, its infrastructure, and, crucially, the natural resources.
And the profits, where do they go?
They're supposed to be reinvested right back into Ukraine from that investment fund.
Right. That leads to the why. What are the stated intentions here? What's the U.S. Treasury saying?
Well, they framed it as a signal, a commitment to Ukraine's long-term peace and prosperity.
Okay. And there's more to it, isn't there? Something about other countries.
Yeah, they also explicitly mentioned wanting to prevent nations that supported Russia's military actions from getting a piece of Ukraine's Reconstruction pie later on.
Interesting. And on the Ukrainian side, what's the prime minister saying?
Denis Shmyhal, he's expressed, optimism, hopes it'll attract major reconstruction money, boost the economy, bring in advanced tech.
And this builds on something from earlier, right? A memo.
Yes, back on April 16th, they signed a memorandum of intent. That basically laid the groundwork for this investment fund, specifically for recovery.
Gotcha. So let's step back and look at the bigger picture, the motivations, from the U.S. perspective.
President Trump has been quite vocal about this. He believes Ukraine is sitting on potentially trillions of dollars in mineral wealth.
Trillions. And he sees that as an opportunity for the U.S.
Definitely. To strengthen U.S. supply chains, especially for those critical minerals everyone needs now. There's also, the idea floating around that maybe these resources could eventually help offset the aid the U.S. has given.
Offset the aid. Okay. And geopolitically.
It's also seen as a move against China's growing dominance in that critical minerals market. A strategic play.
Makes sense. Now, flip the coin. What about Ukraine's perspective? What's in it for them?
Well, President Zelensky apparently first floated the idea of U.S. investment in their mining sector way back.
Oh, really? As a way to get what?
Security guarantees. So for Ukraine, this deal looks like a step towards that, towards, getting more reliable security assurances.
So it's potentially a pathway.
That seems to be the hope.
Yeah.
That this economic tie could, maybe, open doors for talks about military support, maybe even help discussions towards a ceasefire with Russia down the line.
And it shows they have assets too, right? Not just...
Exactly. It demonstrates Ukraine isn't just a financial burden, that it has tangible value to offer.
Okay. Now, how are others reacting? Russia presumably isn't thrilled.
No, not at all. Pretty critical response, as you'd expect. Dmitry Medvedev was quite sarcastic about it.
What did he say?
Mocked the U.S. for making a deal with a country he basically suggested would soon disappear, and he claimed Ukraine will end up having to pay for U.S. military supplies with its national wealth.
Oof. Strong words. Is it just Russia being critical, though?
No, there's skepticism from other observers, too. Some worry this looks like the U.S. leveraging Ukraine's dependence.
Leveraging.
Using the need for aid to get control over resources, but without giving those really firm, concrete security guarantees in return. So... yeah, different interpretations are definitely out there.
Right. So let's dig into the resources themselves, the reality check. We hear trillions, but what's the basis for that?
That's the tricky part. Estimates mention over 20 crucial minerals. Potential value in the trillions, sure. But a lot of the surveys, they're old. Like Soviet-era old, not updated.
So not exactly current data. What are they actually making from mining now?
Currently, the revenue from mining taxes is somewhere around $1 billion a year.
$1 billion? That's a huge difference from President Trump's talk of hundreds of billions. Why such a gap?
Well, Several reasons. It's not just about having the minerals in the ground. Getting them out and processing them is a major challenge.
You mean the infrastructure isn't there?
Exactly. It needs massive investment. And even then, there's a risk projects won't actually be profitable. You've got global market competition, especially China, potentially undercutting prices.
And there's another big issue, isn't there? Location.
A huge one. A significant chunk, estimates are around 40% of the key known deposits are actually in territories currently controlled by Russia.
40%, including the Donbass.
Including the Donbass, yes. So straight away, you have major questions about physical access and, feasibility anytime soon.
Okay, let's get specific. Titanium keeps coming up. Ukraine might have a lot.
Some Ukrainian officials have claimed up to 20% of global reserves. And it's vital stuff. Aerospace, defense.
Sounds very valuable then.
It is. But producing the usable form, titanium sponge, is really complex. Very energy intensive.
And can Ukraine even do that right now?
Well, their only plant that made titanium sponge is shut down. Plus, the global market, dominated by Russia and China. So the potential's there on paper, maybe, but the path to actually producing and selling it looks tough.
Okay, so titanium is complicated. What about lithium for batteries?
Ukraine is thought to have big reserves there too, possibly one of Europe's largest, maybe up to 3% globally.
There's always a but, it seems.
The but here is the type of deposit. It's mostly something called petalite. Extracting lithium from petalite is often trickier and more expensive than from other sources like brine.
And the processing facilities.
Also need serious modernization. They're pretty outdated. So again, not a quick or easy win.
Right. Graphite, also for batteries.
They have graphite, yes. But getting it to the quality needed for modern batteries, battery grade requires more processing. And the existing mines, like Zelensky, use older tech. Needs upgrades.
Okay. Uranium.
Ukraine does have a state-owned plant, JK. But right now, it costs too much to extract the uranium there. It's not profitable.
And didn't they used to get uranium from Russia?
Before the full-scale invasion, yes, their nuclear industry relied on Russian uranium. Shows the existing complexities.
And what about rare earth metals? President Trump mentioned those.
Yeah, he did. But interestingly, the U.S. Geological Survey, the USGS, doesn't actually show evidence of significant rare earth deposits in Ukraine right now.
So maybe potential, maybe not even there. A bit of a discrepancy.
It highlights the need to separate hype from confirmed geology,
Definitely. Anything else significant? Iron ore, steel.
Yeah, Ukraine has large iron ore reserves, a big steel industry historically. But again, much of it relies on older technologies needing modernization.
Were other things discussed in this deal beyond minerals?
Reports suggest oil and gas were also part of the talks, and those potentially could offer quicker returns.
Quicker than minerals?
Yeah, some of these big mineral projects, you're looking at a decade, maybe more, just to get them developed and running. Oil and gas might be faster, relatively speaking.
So looking ahead, the actual economic success of all this seems uncertain.
Far from certain, I'd say.
Oh.
You've got the massive instability from the ongoing conflict, plus unpredictable global markets, that fierce competition from China. It's a lot of hurdles.
But the U.S. side sees another angle. Deterrence.
U.S. negotiators have apparently suggested these investments could act as a deterrent, signaling a long-term stake in the region might discourage future aggression. That's the thinking, anyway.
And for Ukraine, just to recap, it's really about security.
Primarily, yes. It's seen as a vital step towards getting broader security assurances and maybe, just maybe, opening a path for those crucial ceasefire talks.
Okay. So wrapping up this deep dive, we've looked at this new U.S. Ukraine resource deal, the details, the different reasons behind it for both sides, Russia's pretty sharp reaction.
And we've really highlighted those big questions hanging over it all, the true value of Ukraine's minerals and the huge practical challenges in actually getting them out and making it work economically.
Lots to keep an eye on. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We are here to make things clear. New episodes every day.